Have you ever wondered what's actually happening in the brain with ADHD? What if it's not really a deficit of attention, but more of a tuning problem? In this explainer, we're going to dive into the science of how the brain's focus circuits can get mistuned, and, maybe more importantly, how modern medicine works to bring them back into perfect pitch. Okay, so here's our roadmap. First, we'll get into why we should think of ADHD as a tuning problem. Then we'll open up the two main toolkits for treatment. You've got your stimulants and your non-stimulants. And finally, we'll look at the real art of this, finding that perfect pitch for every single person. All right, first up, let's really challenge that old idea that ADHD is just about not being able to pay attention. The science is pointing to something way more interesting and honestly more accurate than that. This is really the whole idea right here. Think about it. The problem in a brain with ADHD isn't that a string is missing from the guitar. It's just that the strings for focus are either too loose or way too tight. Either way, the instrument is out of tune, and you can't play a clear note. So what's really going on deep down? Well, it's a neurodevelopmental thing, and it's all happening in the prefrontal cortex. That's kind of the CEO of your brain. When the circuits there aren't firing efficiently, information just doesn't get processed smoothly. And that's when you see the classic challenges with focus, staying organized, and controlling impulses. You could boil this whole thing down to a signal-to-noise problem, right? When the levels of two critical chemical messengers, we're talking norepinephrine and dopamine, are too low, the important thoughts, the signal, get totally drowned out by mental chatter, the noise. The entire goal of treatment is simple. Turn up that signal and turn down the noise. To make this super clear, let's meet the brain's tuning crew. Think of norepinephrine, or NE, as an old-school telephone operator. Its job is to physically plug in the wires, strengthening the connection to make sure the right message, the right signal, gets through loud and clear. Then you've got dopamine, or DA. Dopamine is like a librarian walking around the brain and going, shh, to all the irrelevant background thoughts, quieting that noise so you can actually focus on the book in front of you. And man, it is a delicate balance. It's what scientists call an inverted U-shaped curve. If you have too little of these chemical signals, you can't focus. You're at the bottom of the curve. But, and this is key, if you have too much, like when you're super stressed out, your performance tanks just as badly. You're right back at the bottom. The whole goal of treatment is to land right in that sweet spot at the very top of the curve for peak performance. So, how do we actually do the tuning? Well, the most common tools, stimulants, act like what one expert calls pharmacological fingers. They get in there and precisely adjust those chemical tuning pegs in the brain. Stimulants basically fall into two main families. On one hand, you've got methylphenidate. It's a blocker. Think of it like putting a block on the drain of a sink. It stops the dopamine and norepinephrine from getting recycled, so more of it just hangs around to be used. Then you have amphetamine. It's a releaser. It's more aggressive. It doesn't just block the drain, it also turns on the faucet full blast to push more of these chemicals out into the system. Let's look closer at amphetamine's action. It's like a little three-step mission. First, it blocks the exit door. Then, it sneaks inside the neuron through that same door. And once it's inside, it goes over to these little storage bubbles full of dopamine and forces them to release their contents. It's a very direct way to get a big increase in your signal. And this is absolutely critical for understanding modern treatment. The goal is to enhance the brain's tonic signal. That's the steady background hum of alertness and focus. This is done with slow-release medications. You want to avoid creating sharp phasic bursts. Those are the jarring spikes that can feel euphoric and can lead to misuse. The entire science behind today's delivery systems is about getting that smooth, steady hum all day long. But what if you can't use a stimulant or just don't want to? Well, luckily, there's a whole other set of tools in the toolbox that can tune the brain in different and often more subtle ways. Take a drug like atomoxetine. It works by blocking the recycling of norepinephrine. But here's the really clever part. In the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain you need for focus, the same recycling truck happens to pick up dopamine too. So by blocking the truck for one, you actually end up boosting both chemicals, but only where you need it. And because it doesn't mess with the brain's reward center, you get the cognitive boost without the potential for abuse. It's pretty smart. And then you have these things called alpha-2A agonists. They work by directly strengthening that norepinephrine signal. Now, guanfacine is called a cleaner drug because it's like a key that's been cut to fit one very specific lock. So, fewer side effects. Clonidine, which is an older drug, is considered dirtier. It's more like a master key that can open several different locks, which means it can cause other effects you might not want, like making you sleepy. So, all of this brings us to the final and, I think, the most important part of the story. You can have all these amazing tools, but they mean nothing without the art of actually applying them. Treatment is all about finding the perfect pitch for each unique brain. The sheer variety of how these medications are delivered is a huge advantage. Does a student just need coverage for the school day? An extended release might be perfect. Does an adult need a quick, short boost for a big project in the afternoon? An immediate release could be the answer. This allows clinicians to literally sculpt the effect to match the rhythm of a person's daily life. And this personalization can get incredibly specific. Get this, with a drug like guanfacine, just taking it with a high-fat meal can totally change how your body absorbs it. It's a small detail, but it shows that true tuning isn't just about the prescription, it's about your lifestyle, your diet, the whole shebang. So what happens when ADHD isn't the only thing going on? Well, there's a pretty clear order of operations. You can't tune a piano during an earthquake, right? So first you have to address any substance abuse. Then you stabilize any major mood or anxiety disorders. Only when those louder issues are under control can you really start to effectively fine-tune the brain for ADHD. And why does all this matter so much? Because we are talking about a really common condition. The official stats say it affects at least 4.4% of adults, but honestly, a lot of newer data suggests that number is a huge underestimate. This is a hidden challenge that millions of people are navigating every single day. This quote from the psychopharmacology expert Dr. Stephen Stahl just nails it. It perfectly captures the elegant simplicity of the goal. Slow up, long on, slow down. It's all about creating that smooth, sustained, tonic focus without the jarring phasic spikes that can cause problems. So you see, we've moved way beyond a simple deficit model to this much more sophisticated tuning model. The science isn't just about fixing a problem anymore. It's about optimizing the brain's unique wiring to meet the demands of life. And that leaves us with a really powerful final thought. As these tools get more and more precise, how do we make sure we're not just treating a condition, but truly helping every single individual find their own perfect pitch?